Hey guys, welcome back to the Fishing for Men podcast. We are continuing our series on how to begin living out our faith. Just a quick review of where we've been. We've talked about going to church, reading our Bible, prayer, and worship. If you haven't had a chance to listen to those, we really encourage you to go back and check them out. And today, we're going to be wrapping up this series by taking a look at serving. But before we dive into that, let me introduce who we got here with us tonight. This is Brandon here. And actually, we got a full house, so we got a lot of intros to do. All 6 guys. Let me start going around from my left.
Hey guys, it's Billy. Man, I'm excited to have everybody back.
Hey guys, I'm Cody.
Hey y'all, it's Cole. I've got some Celsius running through my veins, so I'm ready to go.
Hey y'all, Spitzer here. Happy the stars have aligned to have the 6 of us back together.
Mike, yo, glad to be back.
Yo.
Yo's in the house. Hey, so to kick us off today, I wanted to share a story I heard recently about serving. So one of the guys from the Bible study that all 6 of us attend was talking about serving. And when I think about serving, I tend to focus on how I serve in church, for example. But this was a little bit different. This guy was sharing about how he just has a heart for people who are kind of down on their luck. Homeless people he sees that may just be having a hard time. So as he's driving around town, he looks for opportunities to serve them. And you think about if you see a homeless person on the side of the road, maybe you hand them some money or even give them some food. He goes out of his way not only to go get some food, he takes it to them and he sits down with them and he gets to know them. And the really cool thing as this guy was sharing his story was he knew these people's names. He saw them. He saw them as people, not just someone to pass some money off to and say, there, I did my job. I'm a good person. He truly cared about them. And as I heard that story, it really hit me. Oh, wow. That's what serving looks like. And I think as followers of Jesus, we're all called to serve others just like that. And I think that's a perfect example of how Jesus served people while he was here. By serving, we help to show God's love to others, just like that guy I mentioned did. And in doing that, we bring a piece of God's kingdom to this world here and now. And the great thing is there's no shortage of opportunities around us to serve. They're everywhere. So in this episode, we're going to kind of follow the same pattern we have been in this series. We're going to look at what is serving, why we should do it, and how do we even go about doing it. By looking at these simple questions, it helps us to kind of open up our eyes to see how we can serve those around us in both big ways and small. And in doing that, we grow in our faith and love for others. So let's jump right in with that first question. What is serving? I got a scripture or two I want to share before we dive into conversation, guys. So first one's from Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45. It says, Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And one more quick one. In Matthew 5, verses 14 through 16, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. That way they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So with that story and those scriptures kind of in the background, guys, what comes to mind for you guys when you think of serving?
The thing that's running through my mind right now is, one, slowing down enough to see it. I think that's kind of like the first step of, am I running too fast to where I don't even see the opportunities?
good having some margin in your life, right?
Yeah.
Always
Yeah.
being so busy and cramming
Yeah,
it full.
absolutely. And because even if you don't have that margin, like you can see it, but you'll never do anything about it because you got too much going on.
Mhm.
But just the thing I think about it is to help others, like to be seen. Like
Yeah.
we never know what somebody else might be going through, but there are times where you can tell. For whatever reason, I feel like that's one of the gifts that God has given me is to be able to tell when somebody's off. And as a manager at my job, I get to see this a lot with people, and this has happened a couple of times in the last few weeks where they're not on camera, but I can tell in their tone, and I'm like, "You just seem a little different." I'm like, "Hey, how's your day going?" They're like, "Oh, it's good." I'm like, "Just good? What would make it great?" And they're like, "Well, actually, let me tell you." And then they go through like what is actually going on, and I think that just seeing them for that and recognizing that they are having an off day and there may be something going on in a personal life, sometimes that can be something that just goes a long way with people and being able to see, really truly see them as a person of like, yes, you're my direct employee, but hey, like I care about what's going on. And so just like Benny, he sees those people on the corner or in, the median in the road or under the bridge, and he walks over there and he doesn't just hand them money or go give them a bag of food. He says, "Hey, what's your name? Tell me your
He
story."
cares about that.
I think the major difference in your and Benny's story, though, is that because when I think of serving, I think of volunteering.
Yep.
You are paid to do your job, but you are actually serving in your job as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think you take it to a whole new level when you see people for those things, which is really cool.
I think the other thing is it's not just making the margin of volunteering. I think it's open our eyes to see where we can serve because, like you were saying, sometimes we talk about serving, we think about doing those meal packing or going to homeless or soup kitchen, whatever. But in your case, you're actually talking to someone that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell my kids when we go grocery shopping, Walmart, Target. I don't really go Target. I go to Walmart most of the time. I would tell them, hey, go grab that cart from that person who's loading their car, so that way they don't have to walk. And I always find that opportunity to go just to, hey, can I take your cart for you? And they'll look surprised. And I was like, oh, I'm heading that way. And I'm like, okay, so I'll just take it and and then we just be on our way. I think it's just little things like that, be able to open our eyes to see, and not just trying to do, big things.
Well, and a lot of that's automatic for you too. Like I didn't even think about that. A lot of times I'll walk in the grocery store and see that cart, like, oh, that needs to go inside. That's
Right.
just automatic. So some listeners might actually already be serving.
Yeah.
They just don't even know it. So opening your eyes and realizing that you are serving is, I think,
And even
good
at
to realize too.
even at a grocery store, if you see somebody that's in one of those, what do you call the just almost not a disabled,
Like that electric cart
yeah,
thing.
the
right.
electric thing, and sometimes they can't reach the top, and just ask them, hey, you need something? Can I get it for you? Just simple things like that.
I think, Mike, the examples you're giving kind of begs another question, which is, what is serving? Like at a very basic level. I think the scripture we touched on kind of mentions it, but I think at a very basic level, it's putting others' needs before yourself.
Yeah.
In a way, it could be a sacrifice of time or whatever that sacrifice might be. It's setting aside yourself to do something for someone else.
I think that scripture that you ended with, Matthew 5, I mean, to think about if you were to end verse 16, in the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds, period. Like if it ended there. And for me, serving is all about the last half of that. And glorify your Father in heaven.
Yeah.
And that has been probably my toughest journey around redefining my concept of what is serving. Because kind of like what you said, and Mike, to your point, I've always seen it as like how it's portrayed at like, the on TV, like the big acts of service, but it's the smallest things. I think that's how God's been like, no, I'm going to break that definition for you and show you what it means. Let me pair you with middle schoolers for a few years.
Yeah, let me knock you down a peg.
But I think that's just that whole, it's not, and kind of like what I've always heard you guys say, but that's been my biggest lesson around defining my definition of service is it's not about your spiritual resume. It's about me, man. Glorify me.
Serving others and glorifying God.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's even just think of it at home, right? Serving your wife. Like I used to make coffee for my wife every single day, and I know how she likes it, and that's the only way. There are days that I'm like, okay, what are you doing for me today? I'm making you coffee every day, and then it hits me. It's like, well, God's like tapping my head. It's like, that's not the right attitude. And sometimes it's the attitude that we need to be aware of. Like we can serve, but is there any motive?
Yeah. Are we doing it in hopes we get some sort of recognition or something back?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that authentic service?
Yeah.
Big time. Boy. Ooh.
Oof.
I'm having that one right now. We have a 10-week-old at home, and even 2 nights ago, Katie was like, can you go take the 2 o'clock? And it was like at 2 o'clock, and I was like, I hate when you do this right before, like when we do, like get up, and she's like, can you go do it? And I'm like, you didn't tell me this beforehand. And so I was like, nope.
I didn't mentally prepare to serve, so.
Nope. And then, I got up the next morning, I'm like, oh, okay. Like she does that shift. Most of the time, the least I could have done is take that.
So the question is, did you apologize?
Not in that way. I made up for it the next day, and I took the last night. I took the 2 o'clock shift.
Good job, Billy.
Good job.
So
You should still apologize for having a bad attitude. I'm just calling you out.
I typically do. I
little
honestly
flip
don't
on
remember.
there.
I don't remember if I did or not. Typically, I don't like to because it'll change my attitude if I don't apologize. So, but yeah, that one was. It's happened a couple of times, and I'm like, why do I do that? Like, why can't I just say yes and go do it?
I know. Tough, right?
Human nature.
So I want to keep the discussion moving on. Let's kind of switch gears here for a minute and look at why should we even serve in the first place? Going to jump into a few scriptures, and then we'll continue the discussion. So I think probably the biggest one on why is in John chapter 13. In verses 12 through 15. This is a story about Jesus. It says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So Jesus is clearly telling us right here the example, the standard that we as followers of Jesus are called to. And then another one which goes, I think, even deeper than that is in Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 through 14. It says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says something similar to that in another verse where he's asked what the greatest command is, and he says it's to love God, and then basically what it's saying here is to love other. Everything in the Old Testament hangs on that. So Jesus says, I set the example for you, and then follow God's law, fulfill it by loving others. That's our big why. So for you guys, why do you think Jesus calls all of us to serve?
Well, I think it says it on Galatians 5:13-14 there, that word humbly. Because I think, think about it, like when you're serving you're doing something for other people. And a lot of times in our selfishness, we're doing something so that we get something in return.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were saying just a few minutes ago, right?
Yeah. It's like, is there a motive? Or is it just truly because, we're trying to model Christ and that's why we're doing it?
So I have a question for you guys. This came up in our group chat, but a week or so ago, our church had a summit thing for all the volunteers. And as a part of that, they give out recognition awards for the volunteer of the year.
I know where you're going with this.
Campus. And Mike, to your credit, you were very
I'm
humble.
blunt.
Well, you're blunt too.
I was blunt to ask I guess
Do you want to share? Do you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I sent a text and it's like, man, I feel like crap because, I feel like didn't get recognized. But in my heart, it really is not about me, right?
Yeah.
It's about the church serving others, and we are part of the church. But just to see people going up there on the stage, and I was like, it really sucks because everybody gets recognized, but we're all sitting here and we're all doing all this stuff.
Yeah, you start to compare because
Yeah.
you tell what the people on stage have done. And I was right there with you. I had those same thoughts. I was like, "Will I get called? Can I?"
I will also jump on that bandwagon too.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
So question though, if none of us went to that, do you think we would have ever felt that?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
No, because I didn't feel it. Because I wasn't able to.
You weren't
go.
there.
Yeah.
There's our test case.
There's
Cool.
our- yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Our
there you
control
go.
sample.
Yeah.
See, I think that's where that's where the enemy strikes.
Yeah.
That
Put
Obviously.
a question in your mind of,
Are you good at
did you do enough?
Yeah.
Or, hey, compare yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's
Or nobody saw what you did.
yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think for me, it's like, how come nobody said anything?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they did. They kind of did, right, Cody? I mean, like, Pastor John was up there talking like, hey, we're all serving stuff. But I think it's just the selfishness. It's like, I want to be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see myself like running home and being like, "All right, Debbie, I'm gonna start serving here and here and here, so I can get
I'm
that
gonna
next
get
year."
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Or, yeah, am I not pouring into these kids enough
Yeah.
for it to be recognized?
Because
You actually got a stage
But we
mention.
are doing enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
your name got mentioned on the stage, on the story, so you kind of got recognized. You just weren't there. So that's on you, buddy.
What's funny is the scripture in our topic, the first one we just did in Matthew 5. The next three stories where he says, glorify your Father in heaven, actually talks about don't do deeds for the recognition of other
Yeah.
people. He tells three stories and he says, go do it in secret because your Father will reward you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pray.
And if you don't,
Right,
if you
yeah.
do it for the praise of other people, you've
already
already
gotten
received
it.
your reward.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. But
Well-
there's a Mark Twain quote that is something to the effect of comparison steals all joy.
Yes, it does.
And you know what? The one thing that kind of calms my nerve after that was the statement that I guess somebody had, I can't remember who it was, but it was essentially saying that it was an audience for the audience of one, right? For Jesus, for God. Like the things that we do is for the audience of one,
Yeah.
not for the world to see.
Yeah.
And that really hits me. I was like, okay, I'm going to remember that audience of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If we jump back to your question, Brandon, why? Why does Jesus call us to serve? Thing that was running through my mind in that question is the Big C Church. And that we'll even put it to the six of us. Each one of us has very different gifts. Mm-hmm. Yes, we all serve in different capacities. Even in our, me, Cole, and Spencer all serve as students, but we bring something different to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so when everybody from the church comes together, they're actually bringing the unique skills and gifts that God has given them. And then when you put them all together, you actually are demonstrating who God is to other people. But the reason he calls us to do that is because you bring something that nobody else will bring. And you complete a piece of the puzzle that somebody else within the church will not be able to do. And so I think that's one of the reasons he calls us to serve, is to use the gifts and abilities that he has given us to then give back into people, not just on an individual level, but more like a corporate kind of level too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can even pull out further from that and like go really like big scale. I can't go an episode without mentioning Genesis, so I'm going to get that in there. If you go back to...
I'm glad you're nerding out, because there's something else I wanted to nerd out on, but I decided not to.
Okay, maybe I'll hit on it.
Nope. Keep going.
So back in Genesis 1, God created everything. He put man on earth to co-rule everything with him. Sin entered. Everything got to, became this mess that we still see today. But within that, God has been on a mission ever since sin entered to restore creation back to that state. And he's never given up on that original mission of co-partnering with us to do that. And so I think serving is one key way that God brings us into that mission, that rescue mission of creation with him.
Yeah.
And invites us to share and spread his kingdom to the people around us.
Yeah.
You know, be that in church like you were talking about, Billy, or outside of the walls of church like Benny, the guy I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, does.
I love that you just said kind of that rescue, because one of the things, this phrase we use at work, so listeners, I work in faith-based healthcare, and one of the things we often tell a lot of our caregivers is we are his hands.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If he was here, he'd be doing it. And yes, he can do
I
a
love
lot
that.
of incredible things, right, through who he is and his spirit, but physically we are now his hands. And just like we can't go an episode without Genesis, it's really hard for us to go an episode without John Mark, right? Comer. So, I'm going through one of his, and he just, I always sometimes forget about this whole concept, come to your point about rescue mission, of it's a battle every single day. And when we serve and we give those outward pourings, I think that's how we are on the offensive against the enemy and some of those
Absolutely.
attacks.
1,000%.
That's how we go and we combat that person, because the devil wants that person on the corner to not be seen. And so when we serve them, that's us going on the offensive in that rescue mission. I
The
just kinda
Lord's
love that
Prayer is
you
running
said
through
that.
my mind right now.
Yeah.
May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
That was also Jesus' gospel. If you go back and read so I'm going to go back to Matthew 5. If you go back to Matthew 4 and go look at what Jesus' gospel was, it was, there's a new king and there's a new kingdom, and it's coming in.
and we get to be a part of that.
Get to
through
take part
serving.
in that, of bringing the kingdom to earth,
That's
which is really cool.
Man, I love that line that your company uses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are his hands. That can be used anywhere.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that song we sang at camp, make my hands, make my heart pure and holy
Yeah.
for your glory.
All of this ties together in bringing glory back to God. And I
Yep.
think that's the huge, most important point, is that all of that, everything we do through serving, goes back to God for his purposes.
Yep.
So, Brandon,
Yes, sir.
how do you serve?
How do I serve? That is a good question. Do we want to go around and share what we do at the church? Do we want to throw some Bible verses in before we jump into that?
Let's
Yeah.
hear what Jesus has to say. Maybe he should lead us off.
I love what Jesus has to
Yeah. So Matthew 22, 35 through 36,
say. Thank you for helping me out.
and
Billy.
40. For I was hungry, and I gave you something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then verse 40 is, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And then Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ.
So, back to the question you threw to me. How do I serve? I serve in the church. I serve in our men's group. I greet people on Sundays, and I serve in the recovery ministry, regeneration, that our church does. But those are different categories. But I think if you look at it at a very basic level in all of those different areas, how I look at it is I get to meet people. I get to hear their story, and I get to show them wherever that they're at in life that they're seen, they're loved, and they're valued.
I think down to the core, that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
In any
And it-
area that we serve in, that's what
It
we're
just
all
takes
doing.
on different
Yeah,
shapes and
it's just
forms,
different.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know about you guys. I attempt to do the same thing at home. For some reason, it's a lot harder. I don't know if,
Yep.
it's more
Oh.
emotional,
Yeah.
especially like with kids, or if I don't know. It's easier to do it with people outside of the house, I feel.
Bro, 100%.
Well, because I think at home it's so repetitive. You're doing it every single
Yeah.
day. Every morning I'm making breakfast for all three of them. I'm getting lunches ready. I'm getting them out the door, right?
Well,
so
I think at
it
home,
just becomes repetitive.
it also becomes like a chore, right? Like you do it and they don't see that you're doing it. So
Just take it for granted, right?
yeah, they take it for granted, And that's sometimes I feel like that's what I was thinking. It's like, man, I keep making coffee. What are you doing for me, kind of thing.
Does she
Like
even
tit for
appreciate
tat.
that perfect cream to coffee ratio anymore?
Ask her the next time. Ask her, because she will tell you that the way I make it, even though it's about the same, she just likes how I make it.
Love it.
So
It's because it's with love.
yes, I always
Yeah.
tell them I make the coffee with love. But the thing is that even like Brandon was saying, at home it's hard because, for me at least, I feel like whatever I do, the kids don't really appreciate it. Like even just their tone or their body language, But when I'm serving somebody coffee, whatever, at least they'll smile. They'll give me something, a nod or whatever.
Gratitude.
Yeah, to show a little gratitude. And ask my wife. This is a battle that I'm fighting at home with my son. It's like, does he even see what we're doing? So that's why I think.
But he's not supposed to see it, right? It's not why we do it.
I know. That's the question I was literally going to ask. And it was going to be more of a question to me of, do we do it for the gratitude?
Yeah.
Well, and I would also say, when there's that saying, when you point a finger at someone, you got three pointing back at you. I'm sitting here thinking, what does my wife do for me that I don't notice
Yeah.
or recognize? How am I served at home?
Oh, gosh, right now I get to give you like 100 things.
Right?
All right, let's name it.
But the biggest one is she spends about 6 hours in the car every day, bussing kids around.
Yeah.
Like, just that alone is a
Yeah.
toll.
What I hear, though, from all of us is that the most practical first step you can do, if serving is something you feel like, and you're listening to this and you're trying to explore it, is examine the heart first. Why? Like, why are you wanting to serve? Is it for your own, so you can tell your friends about it? Because that's why I started, to be honest, was I wanted to be able to tell, but look at this. And then when I check my context, so I think that would be, how I serve through Hope Students, yeah, but the most practical step, if I was, for anybody that's wanting to get into it, is ask yourself, what am I really after? Is
Why
it
am
for-
I doing it?
Who am I trying to glorify? Because I have battled
Yeah.
that for the 3 years I've been in doing the student ministry.
Yeah.
And I noticed the moments that I'm trying to compare myself to the other leaders, the other volunteers, are the moments that I take my focus off of the students in front of me and I become less. And that glorifying for God is way less.
And,
Yeah.
if you feel your calling is at church, but you're not wanting to take that step because you're not a Bible nerd like Brandon and Billy, don't let that hold you back. Because that's something that actually I held over my head for a while, was serving with the high school students, is I don't know the Bible inside and out.
Yeah.
That's actually why I wasn't a leader at first.
Right? But just being there for those kids is all they need. So,
Well, that brings up a good question. I think lots of us, if we're talking about serving outside of the home, right? If you're a husband, a father, whether you want to or not, you're in that role, and you're going to be serving in some capacity. If we're looking at outside of the home, how do you get started if you don't know where? Yeah, how do you overcome some of those fears in jumping in? What do you guys think?
I say just jump in. I mean, just go up and see. I mean, just start with the easy stuff, right? Like the everyday life. You go to a grocery store,
hold the door open.
hold the door
Yeah.
open, push the cart back or help somebody load stuff. Or if you go to Home Depot and somebody's got a big item and needs help, I mean, that's the easiest way. I mean, like any decent human would offer a help, right? You see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire. If you have no time, do you have a bottle of water? You can just like, hey, I can't help you, but here's the water. I've done it before.
Yeah. And there's stuff you can do without the personal interaction too, right? Like serve at your kid's school, doing something behind the scenes. That's the way of serving.
The Amazon delivery person. They told that story at the Good Leader Conference of this Amazon driver that comes and picks up packages of books for them because he's in a publishing company, and it's the same person all the time. And they're just like, hey, can I? They asked first. He's like, can I fill up my water? And then it turned into, yeah, sure. I've got time. Like, let me help you fill up your water before you go on the rest of your journey. And now it's turned into a relationship. It's turned into, hey, do you need me to fill up your water? Do you need a snack? Tell me about your day. Like, just simple things that we don't think of. And so, echoing off what Spencer was talking about of examining your heart, I would also ask you to take a look at the people that you interact with every day. And you may see them but are they seen by you? Because there's opportunities everywhere. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's always in distress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could just be seriously asking somebody, hey, how's your day going today? If you got time, tell me about it. That could go a long way. Unfortunately, I think we've become accustomed to doing that and then be like, oh, it's good. Okay, sweet. Let's move on. But like taking a couple of minutes and asking that person who just dropped off a package. I can't tell you how many times that my kids have opened the door to pick up the package and they'll catch them before they get in their car and they're like, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And you just see their face light up.
Yeah.
And like, what a cool thing that they're doing. They don't even know it, but it probably makes a big difference in that person's day that's doing that. So just take a little time and examine who are the people that you interact with every day.
I think what you're talking about there, Billy, it's really cool. It's such simple things. Mike's been hitting on simple things. And, if you do something for someone and it's just, hand them that bottle of water and walk away, it might not have this result. But if you have those simple interactions, find those simple opportunities and show that love towards other people. I have somewhere I'm going with this, but we oftentimes think about sharing the gospel with others, and it seems like this massive hurdle. But I think what we're talking about here is the best, most effective, and easiest way for us to do that. It may take time. It may not always result in that. But I don't know about you guys. If I have to feel like I have to go convince someone that the Bible's right and Jesus is who he says he is, I don't.
Or to be his hands and feet, right?
Yeah.
It's not,
just
yeah.
modeling it through
Modeling
this
him.
servant attitude, I think, is such an awesome way to do it. And it makes it feel a lot easier for me.
I think people can see through your action what your heart truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, you'll question, why is that person so nice, or why is that person helping? And then you'll be asking, is there something that they need? Is there something that they want? And when they find out nothing, it's just truly just to serve, then you'll be thinking, what is different about him? And that's when I think that's when the Jesus came out.
Yep.
Right? And shows up. Because if you just try to use the Bible and says, hey, and that was my experience growing up. A friend of mine's like, hey, you need to go to church with me or you're going to go to hell. Guess what? 30 years later, I mean, that's when I found Christ, is when in my 30s, but this was my teen years. If he would have approached me differently with an action, then I may have seen Jesus a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, at Students Tonight, our student pastor, shout out to Pastor Tisha if she's listening.
Hey, Tisha.
out there. She asked a question at the end of her message, and it was, does your life reflect to other people that you've had an experience with Jesus?
I love that. And I think that's a good way to kind of sum up this episode. How are we all doing in our lives at following the model that Jesus gave us, at serving others?
Mm-hmm.
Do other people see Jesus in us, whether they recognize it as Jesus or not? And do we have anything in our lives, any fears, things from our past reservations that's holding us back? If you do, I encourage you to reach out to someone that you trust near you and talk about it. Maybe just getting someone's perspective outside of yourself will help give you that courage that you need to take that first step, because serving others is for sure the most practical way, we were just talking about, that we can share God's love with the people around us. And even though our heart is focused outwards in serving people, inevitably by doing that, serving changes us too, as we experience God's love through it. As we've been saying kind of every episode, as you're listening and being like, man, I hear Billy over here talking about working with students, or Cole got his name mentioned on stage and I'm still sitting at home doing nothing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about where you want to be, 10 years from now. Just start where you're at. Just take that next right step in the direction where you want to be. So as we did in the last couple of episodes, we want you to hit pause on this episode right now. Take a minute to evaluate where your heart is as a servant. Are you already serving in some ways? Are you not? But where could you maybe? Maybe say a quick prayer to God and ask him to show you where he wants you to serve. It only takes a simple step, and you can get started today. Once you've done that, hit play and we'll wrap up this episode. So Jesus came in this world to serve and not to be served. I hope that's one thing that we've helped, share with you today. And by serving others, we grow in our relationship with God and help share his love to those around us. We help to bring God's kingdom here on earth. We're his hands and feet to this broken and hurting world. Well, that wraps up this series on putting our faith into action. We hope this series was an encouragement to you and that you were able to take away a few helpful nuggets to start walking out your faith. Or if you already have been, we hope that you came away with some new takeaways to help you to continue your growth on this faith journey. Our faith and walk as disciples of Christ is a lifelong journey. Keep chipping away at it and start to see your rhythm with God taking shape. Until next episode.